And don't forget your microphone. First on the agenda, oh, go wait. Sorry.
That's all right.
We want to take attendance
Yes, we do.
to figure out who all's here.
That's right.
So if we could just start down at Doreen, just say that you're present and how you're doing tonight.
Doreen Wilbur, present, doing well. Hello, everyone.
Ralph Donaldson, also present, doing quite well today.
Emily Callahan, present.
Tawanda Stallworth, present and outstanding.
Tristan Milazzo, present, and I'm doing well.
Andrew Razanoskis, present, maintaining.
Kendall Isaac, present, and I'm doing.
Thank you all. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from the August 31st meeting. They were in your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Any amendments or corrections?
I have just a minor correction. At the very end of it, there's a reference to Mr. Donaldson talking about the Mellon Foundation. That was actually me. But besides that, looks fine.
That's okay. So, in the part of the minutes discussing the foundation, Member Donaldson should be replaced with Member Isaac. Any other amendments or questions, suggestions? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I so move. I so move.
Okay. Member Donaldson moves.
Second.
Member Isaac seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you.
All right, so at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about the working groups. There was a proposal that was made regarding how the work would be divided. And the thought was that we would take some time to sort of think about it, but we didn't need to identify at our last meeting, but maybe we should go ahead and do that at this meeting. So there's, just to recap, there's two working groups. One is the research working group and the other one is the community engagement. The research would be more along the lines of the conversations that Member Donaldson, Milazzo, and I had with regard to specific analysis that we would like to see happen. The community engagement would be more talking with folks in the community and or groups, organizations in the community. So does anyone have any questions about how we got to this point with that division or assignment of working groups? Are we all clear on that piece? And then are there any volunteers who would like to sign up for which group? Not everyone at once.
I'd like to sign up for the community engagement group.
I'd like to sign up for that one as well.
I will sign up for the research working group.
I can probably serve on both as needed because one is kind of my workplace and the other is my current job. So as needed in both, if that is helpful, float between the two.
I will serve where needed, and I can serve on both, but I think my talents might be best utilized on the community outreach group.
Are you saying both?
I'm saying if the body thinks the commission would be best served by me serving on both, I can do so.
So I think the same thing, that I could probably do both, but I sort of put you in parentheses under research, and I put myself in parentheses under community engagement, and then that way there's leadership in both places. Does that sound good?
I will never escape my fate as a professor. That's fine with me.
Okay. And then member Isaac. Is there a working group that you would like to? Just for now.
That's why I was silent. I was like, I'm not sure how much value I add, but I am happy to get started with the research group.
Okay.
Raph, yes.
Yes. So we were looking to at least, so it's the minutes from before, to limit to 4 people, 4 commissioners in each group. I've not been mentally keeping a tally, but what is the tally? How do we have about 4 in each group? Do we have more than 4 in each group?
So we can't have 4 of us meeting at one time to discuss anything that would be policy or recommendation related, because that's a quorum.
Correct. So I was asking, since you were keeping the tally, how many people are in each group?
4.5.
So we need to reduce by 0.5.
I think that could be resolved by me agreeing to go with community or with research, Tawanda, and you going with community engagement. So you can cross me off there
And cross
yourself off
Then
there.
that's still 4. So 4 is the quorum, so we need to reduce it by 1 more. Or
I don't think that's correct, actually. Kendall, you want to
Yeah,
remind us here?
we keep getting mired in this, and I don't know why, but this is not really an issue. These working groups are merely to try to do some of the preliminary legwork to lay the ground for different initiatives that will eventually come before this full body for action. These working groups are not taking any action. They're not voting. They're not doing anything outside of the busy work to get us to the point of action. Therefore, there is no public meeting. So it doesn't really matter that there are 4 or 5 on a particular working group, because we're not conducting business in that fashion.
so it sounds like it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
Okay, that works for me. Thank you.
I know last time we brought up the possibility of including community members. Are we still doing that, or is that still up for discussion?
This is a question about that. I think it's certainly still a possibility, and we're still up for doing it. Can it be done on a kind of ad hoc basis, so we don't have to appoint permanent external members? But would it be possible for us to bring external members in to discuss specific items as they arise?
Hey, I almost think, particularly for the community engagement working group, that there's going to be some community members and community input actively and ongoing with that group.
So can we understand it as functioning in the following way? It's left up to the judgment of each working group when and how and for how long they bring outside experts in to assist them with their work. Does that sound fair?
Fair.
It does.
Great. So I think we're settled with the working groups that we have, and probably would want to start even with the community engagement group. I think starting to make some of those connections and happenings, like we've already done. So
Tawanda, would you mind reading those lists out for Nicole for the purpose of the minutes?
sure. So for the research working group, we have members Donaldson, Milazzo, Stallworth. I'm sorry. Can I start over? For the research working group, we have members Donaldson, Milazzo, Callahan, Isaac, and Stallworth as needed. For the community engagement working group, we have members Wilbur, Razanauskas, Milazzo, Callahan as needed, and Stallworth. I can actually just let you see this after the meeting. Thank you, Emily.
Before we move from that agenda item, did anyone have any content or questions that they wanted to assign to either group or put on their radar for when these groups get together and have their first meeting?
I think for community engagement, if we could all come prepared with just, maybe a list that we each have brainstormed as to whom, or as to who, we should reach out to, just for the discussion and to learn and to listen.
That's a great suggestion. Are there any others?
Should we appoint a working group lead so that someone has the responsibility of organizing the meeting?
I think maybe let the working groups decide amongst themselves how they want to function and be led. Sound good? Anything else on that agenda item? Thank you.
Actually, I don't know. I wonder if it
Of
actually.
course,
Sorry.
of
Sorry.
course.
I think it actually might be helpful to have a lead person so that when we reconvene, we know that there's like some person who's on the minutes who's supposed to be consulted or something like that. Also, so people know who is supposed to do the organizing of meetings in advance. So maybe a temporary lead, and then they can decide afterwards.
I'm just wondering if that's, since we just chose who's going to be in which working group, if it would be better for that working group to decide. I don't disagree that there should be a point person, but I think the working group amongst themselves would be better able to determine how that looks for them, for each of them. That sound good?
And the expectation will be that each group meets at least once before the next meeting of our commission, and that you will be a standing item under discussion items moving forward with items to report out. Great.
Thank you.
Shall we move on to item B, the September 30 Day of Truth and Reconciliation conversation continued. So as you all recall, some residents of Carlisle presented to us on this item, urging us to take action in solidarity with Canada to recognize September 30th. At the last meeting, the commission decided it needed a little bit more time to collect information and digest the request. In the meantime, Mayor Scott has drafted a proclamation that was in your packet. This is a draft proclamation, I believe. So that was included in your packet for consideration. And at this time, I will open the floor to any member who wishes to speak on this issue now that we're returning to it for the second time.
I continue to support it in theory. I think it makes perfect sense. I still question the date, but and why we're tying it to an initiative in Canada when we know that we have an Indigenous peoples holiday, or not holiday, but month of observance in November of every year in this country. So I guess I'm not understanding why are we piggybacking on something else as opposed to making it more meaningful either in the month of November or again tied to something relevant to the real reason why this is all at the top of our radar, and that is the Carlisle Indian Industrial School and their ultimate demise.
I actually see it a little different than the celebration of Indigenous people. And the reason that I see it differently is because this deals with the truth and a sort of reckoning with atrocities in a way that highlights that and highlights this sort of accountability piece that in this country we don't do a good job of. So I think, for this proclamation to align itself with Canada points to that need for truth as a means of celebration in a way that is less celebratory and more based in accountability.
So, so how are we assessing that aligning ourselves with Canada is more apropos and getting there? I guess I'm still confused as to what. I mean, I understand that they have a, as it says in the proclamation, that they did form a Truth and Reconciliation Commission themselves. I haven't had a chance to read their outcomes to see what where they landed with all of that, but um, I don't know. I'm just one voice, but I still not quite grasping.
I think just to follow up right behind that, as you were speaking, I thought about the difference between Black History Month and Juneteenth is how the separation for me mentally looks a little bit like that.
So, I'm trying to understand what exactly we're discussing because the mayor can make the proclamation and has drafted a proclamation to make, and the proclamation will announce the day, whether or not this body wants this day or some other day. So I'm just trying to figure out, are we talking about making a recommendation that the proclamation be different? Are we talking about what we want to do? I'm trying to understand exactly what our role, since the mayor has already drafted a proclamation.
So I think in terms of so this body has been commissioned for a specific sort of work. And I think in keeping with the borough's commitment to the work of this commission is saying, hey, we'd like to do this thing, but we'd like to bring it by the experts in the room on matters of truth and reconciliation so that Mayor Scott or that borough council isn't just taking matters sort of into their own hands and doing what they think is best, but rather getting together with the minds that have been selected for this work for the proclamation that's in line with that, to take our temperature on it. And I mean, it's not likely that we put the total kibosh on it tonight, but I think that that's within our it's within the function of this group.
So one thing we can do in this public meeting is endorse this proclamation as is, make recommendations.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be, I'm leaning more towards Tawanda, kind of what you were saying. I need to read one more time, go through it, but I would be for endorsing this, and yeah, joining in this and collectively, whatever that looks like.
So what do we want to do about this?
I think we should entertain a motion to support the mayor's proclamation, and that we should vote on our support for this proclamation.
Before doing so, what does support look like? Like, is it just an endorsement, or I'm just trying to?
Yeah, I think it's just an endorsement.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
okay.
So moved.
Seconded. Wait, did I just open it up for the motion? I can't second that. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. I'll second it.
All those in favor, let it know by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you.
The last item on the discussion items is simply called new business. That's probably not the best way of describing it, but it's just an item that's meant to recognize that we come together monthly or bi-weekly, and we have different pieces of content and information that come into our orbit. And so it's just an area where we can open the floor for members to share things that they would like for the commission to consider, or informational items. With that, I will open the floor. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share or ask the commission to consider?
As Tawanda looks over. So it's not news necessarily, new business, but it is important for the commission as it plans going forward that I have to resign my post of commission following the October 2021 meeting. I do that, of course, with a heavy heart because I really have enjoyed what we've been trying to accomplish here and the work we put into it. And I did take a job in Massachusetts, which will necessitate me not being readily available. And although I still have a house in the community, I won't be really here most of the time. So the bylaws do call for trying to put forth or working with the borough council with potential replacement names, so that the borough council can vote on who would be a replacement, and hopefully they can expedite that. So in October we will have an idea of who will be the seventh commissioner.
Thank you, Member Isaac. And as I shared in email, it's been a pleasure working with you on this committee, and it's definitely our loss and their gain. And certainly appreciate all that you've done so far in a short period of time for the commission, especially when it comes to those bylaws. You may have been here for such a time as this, so thank you for that. It does open up some conversation, though, for us, I think, as far as what replacement looks like. We don't really have a setup for what happens when we need to replace someone. And then I think also it opens up conversation for just the recognition of who all is sitting here. And many of us are in education and or very talented in our careers, or else we wouldn't be here. So the likelihood that any others of us could be whisked away to greener pastures isn't outside of the realm of possibility. So is it maybe worth considering a replacement procedure that would also include maybe an alternate if in the future Doreen gets whisked away to some fancy schmancy school or if any of us would have to leave for any reason. That may be something that we want to, while we would have to go through a selection process now, a replacement process for Member Isaac, do we want to maybe include an alternate as well during this time? So the floor is open for conversation, and I'll have some thoughts again as well.
I like the idea of an alternate. I really do. After choosing, because again, unless I win the lottery, I don't think I'm going anywhere. But I think anything could happen at any given time. So I like it.
And I'll just add my initial thoughts around an alternate would look like very similar to what we're doing. The only difference would be that the alternate would not be able to vote unless they were an official member of the commission. But otherwise, they would be expected to attend and held to those attendance requirements that are outlined in the resolution, I believe. It's just my thought. And their availability would need to be from now until the end of 2022.
So, you may need to consider an amendment to the bylaws in order to have something that formalistic. And of course, Deputy Mayor is here and could possibly chime in on that. But I'm thinking that there may be a need for more formality if the alternate is going to play a role, even a non-voting role, of being readily available for all meetings. I think it's one thing to have a person in waiting, but another thing to have expectations.
My own thought is that there are lots of legislative bodies or quasi-legislative bodies um, in the borough and in the state, and it's just not common to have alternates of this kind. And so I don't know what would necessitate having such a thing here. Like, there's not an alternate on like borough council, from what I understand. It's not like a borough. Like, there's not a similar sort of thing in the General Assembly. So I'm just not clear what the specific need would be for having an alternate, as opposed to just when something happens, supposing that there's sufficient lead time that we just then appoint someone, or excuse me, we appoint someone, borough council appoints someone who's appropriate.
I would say if we do choose an alternate, which I do like the idea, they not be held to the attendance standards. You know, maybe they receive an invite, they definitely receive meeting notes and minutes. They're certainly invited to work on different committees with us, but as an alternate, I don't think they should be held, in my personal opinion, to the same attendance standards.
Would the idea of this alternate be then a fill-in for permanent on an as-needed basis? If okay,
I wasn't necessarily thinking as needed, but if the need would, if some, not that if one of us were to be absent or on vacation or out of town, but rather we needed to step away permanently, and then the alternate is already. And the reason that I suggested the attendance piece was so that they'd just be ready to jump right in. Part of my reasoning for this too is I abhor selection processes and interviews, and that process just sometimes is really long. And considering our timeline already, if we can bring it down to only have to do it once, might be, I think, in our best interest. Those are just some of my thoughts. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Would it be possible to accomplish this by, so I suspect there'll be multiple people who want to fill the role of Commissioner Isaac, and one such person will be chosen, and others perhaps will not be, or certainly will not be, that we just keep those people in mind, the people who are not chosen, who are like the runners-up. Perhaps that could be a way of not having to repeat the process, since we've talked to other people who are interested and we think qualified, but just not perhaps as meritorious or something as the person who is chosen to replace Commissioner Isaac.
I'd like to invite Deputy Mayor Schultz forward to see if he has any feedback or comments on this.
I can't walk over here and say no, right? Couple of things. We do have alternates on a couple of our boards and commissions. Not on most of them. Zoning Hearing Board, the Human Relations Commission, and maybe one other I'm not thinking of. So it's not without some precedent in the borough. I think one, and you all may remember, one of the questions we typically ask in interviews is, if you don't get selected now, if we need to fill a position on this commission later or on another board or commission, can we keep your name on file? And most people say yes to that. So that's typically what we do too. We found where we do have alternates on our boards and commission, as the co-chair Stallworth mentioned, that can be sort of the farm, sort of part of the farm team, to call up when there is an opening in the active membership on the commission. And I think what you'll need to consider is, I think in your body and where you're talking about doing things, or how you're talking about doing things, is have that alternate maybe only step into the permanent role on a short-term basis when there's an actual vacancy, not just when there's an absence. And then you can consider that person for the permanent position when you, and whether you decide to cast the net for interviews for that permanent position, or you decide to just recommend promoting that person to the permanent position, and then you're just casting a net for the alternate position. And that's typically what we'll do with our boards and commissions.
So maybe a question that I'm thinking about and not asking is what would be the role of the commission in that selection process?
This commission's a little different than most. So I think we'd probably expect a little bit more active role than we do with our other boards and commissions. We usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, we always reach out to the chair of the commission that is having a member replaced, to make sure that they're part of the process or invited to be part of the process. If it's a promotion of an alternate to a standing member, we always ask the chair if that person has been sort of working well with others, that sort of thing. Make sure that they'd be good as a permanent member of the commission. I think with this body, we'd probably want at least one or two of you to partake in the interview process, as painful as that can be. I know sometimes, but I think it would be incredibly beneficial to have you as part of that process. And whether it's a couple members of the commission and Councilor Stubbe, or me and Councilor Stubbe, or some variation of that.
So, if I understand you correctly, you likely already have a pool of people who've already said, I'm willing to step up should there be a vacancy, so it may not be quite as onerous of a process to get to a selection.
We interviewed, I think, 19 people originally, so I imagine many of them would want to step up if they could. We usually post this online. We send it out to neighborhood groups and other organizations when there's an opening on a board or commission. So I expect we'd probably get maybe some others who didn't apply originally.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So I think the question that's before us is, do we want to ask council to start the selection process for Member Isaac's replacement? I think that's an easy yes. Do we want to employ an alternate, either to be present with us or to just be in the wings, or not at all? I think those are the three options as far as alternate.
One argument against selecting an alternate is, if you don't know in advance who might be leaving the committee, there may be representational qualities or expertise that we're trying to replace. And so waiting and seeing who might leave might be important to the selection. So that would be an argument against an alternate to me.
I agree with Emily's take on that, Co-Chair Callahan's take on that, and yeah, and think it may be prudent to not have an alternate and be a little more fluid if the unfortunate occurs and you're faced with this dilemma again.
Any other feedback? I think you guys may have changed my mind on this alternate thing. Dang, I hate when that happens. So it sounds like we want Borough Council to proceed with the selection process, but only for Member Isaac's replacement. And if it were to occur in the future, we would just want them to follow whatever selection procedures, and then including Emily and I being a part of that touch point for that selection process. Does that sound like the way that we want to go? Fantastic. Is there a motion?
I move to do what you just said.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Donaldson moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Wilbur, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, just to revisit that, does that suffice you all moving forward for selection? Great, thanks. And moving forward to public comment, we'll start with those that we have on Zoom. Miss Stephanie, do we have anyone on Zoom?
There is no one with their hand raised at the moment, so no.
Great, thank you. And then members, any members? Folks who are present in Borough Hall, anyone that would like to give public comment? Going once. Thank you so much. If you could just give your name and your address for the record.
Oh, sure. It's Jason Turner, 165 East High Street, Carlisle, PA 17013. Vicky couldn't be here tonight. She's worked with Sean on some of this stuff for the resolution, and she asked me to just come and kind of get an overview of what's going on and say thank you guys so much for just hearing us out. We appreciate ourselves. She's actually meeting with some people with another connective dot of information that kind of ties it all in. I want to say thank you so much to Tawanda.
Mm-hmm.
Your kind of explanation of Black History Month and Juneteenth kind of it's something that people can kind of understand as to like they can see the representation of the two separate things. Not that at either time do we want to not honor people, but there's a solemn way to honor them and there's a joyous way to honor them. One of the things that Victoria is actually working on, and I know you had said amongst yourselves as what, and I don't know that we have any, say in this other than ideas that we can continuously bring or information that we can put out to people. And I guess some of it's trying to figure out what the avenue looks like for that. Do you go through the borough? Do we go through you guys? Who do we bring it to? The proclamation now opening this umbrella. I think what we kind of, as the community of people that are working with this idea or have tendrils of knowledge in this field, would ask is that you just support the borough with your knowledge, because you guys are the people that are kind of more knowledgeable about those things. You're the guys that are out there looking for them. I mean, they're making a lot of decisions for a lot of people, and they don't necessarily need to be doing history research. But to add to these things, with the actual intention of seeing where they are and not seeing where they are now, but the lineage of where they were. I was just actually put into an information cycle that I'm working on, and this is new information that's coming to us even about the Indigenous school here and how much of it is linked in more towards Canada and the school system than just that. But, you know, Dickinson College, we moved workers from that school to the college, from the slate mills. We put them in the Maslins, before it was Maslin Industries, into the factories that were in Carlisle. We put them in General Motors factories. We farmed these people out. So the idea of this connection, I think the more we look into it as we can, the more we'll find things that I don't think many people know. And I think that's the way to honor people, is putting it all out there and saying, look, we did these things. We know it's there. Let's not be those guys, but let's not ignore that it was there. It can be part of our history, but we don't have to, glorify it or or vilify it. But mostly, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for hearing us out, and we appreciate any support you can give. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind giving your email address to Joyce, to Kate, Nicole. If you could give your email address to Nicole so that the commission could follow up with you with our community engagement work. Thank you. Any other members of the community that wish to be heard? Nothing on Zoom? Fantastic. So we'll go ahead and just have some announcements from members of the commission. If anyone has anything to add. I think Member Isaac's announcement was sort of sandwiched in some other business, but I know some others may want to offer sentiments of record at this time as well.
I have a few upcoming things, like through the end of the year, not a lot of dates, but just things to keep on your radar, whether it is commission related or just to learn about. So September, is International Underground Railroad Month. So there may be stuff happening outside of Carlisle, just in the media, if you wanted to learn more about that. There's a few community partners looking at a November date for a film premiere of Home from School, which is about an hour-long film on the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. No date is set on that yet. We're working on that. And I'll let everybody know when we know that also. And Lincoln Cemetery's plaque ceremony hasn't been set yet, but it will be forthcoming, hopefully, before it gets too cold. So just a couple things to keep on your radar, and hopefully we can be visible in some way at those events. But as I learn set dates, I'll let you all know too, just so you all know.
Thank you. Any others?
I have just a small thing to mention. We talked some time ago about the fact that we might, each of us in our individual capacities, be approached by people asking about the work that we do. And so I thought I would just, in the spirit of, we said we would talk about this collectively, mention what happened. I was approached by a researcher at Notre Dame University, or University of Notre Dame, about truth and reconciliation work, just kind of what is happening here. This person seems to be doing kind of comparative project, looking at different places that are doing TRC work in the U.S. And so I spoke with this person briefly about that, and kind of, since there's not too much work that we've yet accomplished, I said that this person could kind of check back in with the commission later. And so I expect that they're going to do so. I don't know quite when, but just thought I'd kind of let people know in the interest of full disclosure.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Turner's comments too point to how to get in contact with the entire group. So just a reminder for everyone that trc@carlislepa.org does get eventually to the members of this commission for us to consider things globally. I appreciate you, the way you handled that. I think that's great. I'm looking forward to that. Anyone else? Just want to note that our police chief, Tara Landis, is here with us this evening. Sir, do you want to greet us at this time, or do you have anything to offer?
Tara Landis, 240 Lincoln Street, Carlisle, PA. How's that? Commissioners, thank you very much for inviting me. I was almost a willing person to show up. The work's very important, in all seriousness. And the sooner that you can think about something to do with our patch, the better off we'll be. If you take the note, even if the Native American does not offend you, very few countries have rifles on their flag. The country of Zimbabwe, I believe, has an AK-47 on their flag. But very few countries have weapons on their flag. And as Deputy Mayor Schultz stated, that when I was interviewed for this job, I asked them, how in the world did you get away with that? And, you know, where it does mean a lot. I think the other thing that's very odd is how many people are so callous and never noticed it. You know, many people don't notice that emblem. And we wear it prominently on both sleeves of our uniform. Many people don't notice that. And I think that, you know, we've become immune to very many of the things that have transpired in our country. And this emblem itself is better than ours. Ours is like a character. If you've seen our patch, it's like a cartoon character. And so I just will be happy. And my only ask is the same size and color. You know, whatever you wish to put inside there, because it's going to cost a lot of money to take those patches off and replace it with something else. You know, but it is important. It's a symbol. But thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for letting me come up here and speak to you this evening. You know, it's almost 8 o'clock, so I'll stop. Are there any questions about the police department or anything the police department does that I can answer for the commission?
I think, Mr. Landis, I appreciate that, what you're saying about the crest. I think what we'd probably like to do is maybe get an update of where council is with that and be prepared to make some at least preliminary recommendations at our next meeting. And then maybe at a future meeting, is it possible that we could invite you back for just an overview of the entire police department? What you all do, what your experiences have been like as a body, and how you're comprised. Would that be something we could schedule for a future meeting?
Sure, we'd love to do it.
That would be awesome.
Talk about one of my favorite things is the cops. You have some phenomenal young officers in the Carlisle Police Department. It's a complete change from where it was before. And that's one of my favorite things you can ask the Deputy Mayor. I love talking, bragging on them. You know, they do some really phenomenal things. In fact, if you can think about toys for kids, you know, we have a program that we're trying to collect toys, you know, for kids in shelters. And every Christmas, at least the past 3 years, we've had a party and given out toys to kids less fortunate at Christmas. Nice. You know, little things like that. You know, we see phenomenal things every day. You know, but even good cops make mistakes sometimes, and that's where I'm accountable to the borough council and the borough manager, and to the citizens of Carlisle, and I in fact hold them accountable.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Any other announcements? from anyone? Nothing. All right, well then we can give back. Oh, good point.
We will be on the first Monday schedule starting next month.
So our next meeting then would be October 4th at 6 p.m. right here.
The first month, the second month.
Oh,
October 11th, and that's Indigenous Peoples Day.
The first Monday is hard, so.
Yes, we're the second Monday.
I thought that our regular meeting was the first Monday. The reason we are meeting the second Monday is because of the Labor Day holiday.
No, the first Monday of every month, there's already a meeting here around this time. So.
No, we were the second meeting.
we did agree with
Because that's August 9th.
Oh,
Yeah.
that reason.
I gave Doreen a bum steer. I'm so sorry.
Ye-
People's Day, so I don't know if we want to move the meeting of that. You may want to consider.
Is Borough Hall open?
Yes.
What do y'all think?
Is there some are there some events, celebratory or otherwise, that we would be conflicting with?
I don't know of anything at this time.
Perhaps in that spirit, an agenda item that we could have is what that day might look like in the future in Carlisle.
I think that's a great idea. I think kind of more generally, given the work that our commission is supposed to do, I actually think it's a great idea for us to meet on that day.
I'm willing to do that. How do others feel about meeting on that day?
I'm good with that as well.
I can be there.
That works for me. So then our next meeting is October 11th at 6 p.m. right here. Following meeting after that would be November 8th. And might as well just finish out the year. December 13th. Stephanie, do you have those dates?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at our calendar now. They're all. And that puts you in between county. It usually will put you in between workshop and council. Most
That's
of
the
time.
plan.
Yep. There may be 1 or 2 months where it doesn't, but.
Cool, thank you. Anything else?
I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.